A company that first started producing radios all the way back in World War II just released its first full production motocross bike, and yes, it's pretty freaking rad. Welcome back to another video, everybody. My name is Anthony, and in today's video, we're going to discuss the all-new 2026 Ducati Desmo450 MX. Now, when a new motorcycle comes out, there's a lot to discuss and talk about, so we're going to break this video down into 6 separate segments, so that way you guys get a clear and concise understanding of everything there is to know about this all-new dirt bike. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and show you guys the bike and jump into the aesthetics. Starting off with the looks, I think this bike looks amazing, and I do understand that looks are subjective, so I might love it and you might hate it, and somebody might be in between us. But overall, I am a huge fan of the big, bold red plastic. It really just screams Ducati, especially when looking at the front end. The front number plate, the front fender, draw a lot of inspiration from Ducati's supermoto model called the Hyper Motard. The rest of the plastics, that being the shroud, the side plate, the rear fender, have a unique characteristic to it that I'm a huge fan of. I like the use of a lot of plastic that covers a lot of surface area, and overall, I think it will actually enhance the control of the bike out on track, as you have more contact surface area between the bike itself and the inside of the rider's leg. Yes, we can get into the topic of there are way too many red brands in the motocross segment between now Ducati, Honda, Beta, and Gas, but Ducati has been red for a very long time, and I do not expect them to change the color of their bike just because other manufacturers have a red bike as well. Let's move on to segment 2 of this video and talk about the engine. As per the name, this bike does feature the Desmodromic valve system. Now, I'm not going to talk about Desmo too much, as I could spend the next 15 to even 20 minutes talking about that system alone, but up on your screen now is going to be the horsepower and torque characteristics of this bike. You can see the curve, what it revs out to, and the max output from this bike. Now, this bike's max horsepower output is a whopping 63.5 horsepower. Now, I don't know all the horsepower numbers from all the 450cc motocross models off the top of my head, but that is a very competitive horsepower number right out of the gate. You can also see that is reached at 9,400 RPM, and this bike still can go in the rev range quite a bit after that. It does drop down a little bit as the curve shows, but this bike revs out all the way to a whopping 11,900 RPM thanks to that Desmo valve system. I am personally super intrigued and excited to see how this bike performs out on track due to that unique characteristic and technology that Ducati has. The Desmo valve system has not been seen in a motocross bike before from any of the other brands such as Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Honda, or KTM. Let's move on to the chassis. This chassis has a similar style of frame to the KX450, RMZ450, and even the CRF450R, that being the aluminum perimeter style of frame. Now, I'm not saying this is just another Honda, Suzuki, or Kawasaki that is labeled Ducati. This bike will, of course, have its own unique and distinct handling characteristics out on track. That is just another way of saying, hey, this is the same style of frame, but this is Ducati's iteration or take of that style of frame. One of the cool things about this frame is it is made up of 11 different elements, which is super cool. I guess that's half of the elements that the other manufacturers use in their frames. That is what Ducati is claiming, at least. One thing that really stood out to me is there is no weld between the head tube and the main frame itself. Not only does it look really good, but it also eliminates one extra weak point of the frame itself. As for longevity of this frame, I do expect this to last quite a bit longer just due to that head tube design. Looking at the bike with no plastic on, you can see it's really clean, neat, and tidy. There's no unnecessary wires just hanging out in random places. So I think working on this bike might be quite simple just due to the overall layout and design of this bike as well. Let's move on to the suspension. Up front is the 49mm twin chamber spring fork from Showa. This is the same fork seen on the KX450, CRF450R, and the RMZ450. Now, I do expect the internal valve setting to be unique to Ducati, but overall, this is the same style of fork and the exact same fork from Showa on this Desmo450 MX. Out back, it actually has the same shock as the 2024 and 2025 KX450, and now the 2025 KX250. Again, I do expect the valving to be unique and distinct to the Ducati brand, but overall the hardware is the same. We can tell that from a few different angles, not only the shock body itself, but also the bumper cup. And going back to the pre-production prototype model seen at Anaheim 1, it actually had the 2024-2025 KX450 mounted in that bike. In terms of hardware, that Showa componentry is really high level. I think the only way to get more performance potential from both the front forks and the rear shock is to go ahead and get it revalved by any reputable suspension tuner. Next up is the brakes. It sports full Brembo units up front and out back, that being both the master cylinder and the brake caliper as well. As far as the rotors, it utilizes a 260mm up front and a 240 out back, supplied by Galfer rotors. Overall, I do think the stock brakes on these are going to perform really high level, as these are the same brakes seen on the Austrian models, which I do think has an advantage or performance enhancement over the Nissan units seen on some of the Japanese models. Now, last but not least, we have to talk about the technology seen on this bike. Not only do you have the industry standard technology, such as launch control or even traction control, but you have a few other options as well. You can select from 2 different ride modes. I'm assuming one will be a more hard-hitting and aggressive ride mode, and the other being a more progressive and linear map for those riders who want a smoother power delivery. Beyond that, you also have 2 other adjustments, that being a throttle response mode with 2 modes as well to optimize the throttle response delivery. So again, I'm kind of assuming that one will be more aggressive and the other will be a little bit more linear and progressive to kind of tailor this bike to each individual rider. Last but not least, and probably my favorite addition to this bike as far as technology is concerned, is the addition of engine braking control. One of my big complaints with the 450 and one of my biggest worries with this bike is this bike will have too much engine braking. If you've ridden a 450 before, when you let off the throttle, a lot of weight transfer gets thrown to the front end of the bike as the engine braking starts to kick in. And that's one of my least favorite things about a 450cc motocross bike. So having the option to adjust this off the showroom floor is a huge plus for me. I think no other motocross bike, to my knowledge, offers this sort of technology right out of the showroom floor. You normally need to go get a Vortex ECU that needs to get mapped by a reputable engine or ECU tuner like XPR Motorsports or even Twisted Development to kind of customize that characteristic. I think even the Yamaha Power Tuner app might have that adjustability, but again, with the stock ECU or just Power app itself, there is certain limitations and parameters that you have to stick to. So I'm hoping this has wide parameters as we can just further fine tune this bike to each individual rider like myself. All right, now that we've talked about the bike, let's go over some of the experience that you get when purchasing this bike. Now there's an online configurator if you go on Ducati's website where you can really customize this bike to your liking. Now the base price of this bike is $11,495, quite a bit less than a lot of people were speculating, even myself. My guess was $12,500 to $13,500, but to have it come in under $11,500 or just under that mark, I'm super impressed, as that is a competitive price to not only the Austrian models, but some of the other models in this segment. One of the unique things about this bike is the online configurator on Ducati's website. So you can customize your Desmo450 MX in real time on Ducati's website. And there are a host of aftermarket upgrades that you can do, including an Akrapovic racing exhaust, Brembo factory brakes, both front and rear, the same brakes that Jeremy Sewer and Mattia Guadagnini are using in the MXGP series. There's also triple clamps, wheel sets, plastics, skid plate, and a host of other accessories as well. Now we're wrapping up the video here, so I want to summarize what we talked about. We talked about the aesthetics, the engine, the chassis, suspension, brakes, the online configurator, and pretty much everything in between. Now, if I did miss anything, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section below to correct me on anything or add any additional info, as I am chomping at the bit to get any information on this bike. I want to thank you guys for sticking around to the end of the video, and if you learned something, please let me know down in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace.